Ugh, that's horrible. I also think it's so important that we're doing lives like this because I feel like there's so much information that people are unaware of. I mean, just hearing this, for me, it's like, wow, I'm pissed
Yeah.
off. And I had no idea that that they were doing this. Like I was, so I think that education is so important, and educating people will also get them fired up to vote. Speaking of education, I have some statistics here that say that last year there were an estimated 8.3 million new eligible young voters for the 2022 midterm election, and that made up about 16% of the 18 to 29 age group for that election. And in 2022, we saw the second highest turnout amongst young voters in 30 years, which is incredible. Uh, but we still got to keep up on it, especially with this local election that's about to happen. What do you think is the most important? What's the importance of young people voting in their local elections, and why do they need to be invested in it?
I mean, I think, and I sort of alluded to this, elections are decided by the people that show up. You know, the statistic that was floating around a while ago that said that voter turnout in the 2022 election here in New York was 23.3%. That means of registered voters, less than a quarter of them showed up. And that's how we ended up with Mayor Adams. You know, I mean, with everything that was going on and all of the papers and everything was swirling around the primary, and we had like this amazing like buffet of choices, 23% of the ones that showed up, and that's how we ended up where we are. And again, I think there's just it's hard to understand. I think for a young person to understand like that there is a trickle down effect. That if you put people in the office that don't care about the things that you care about, the trickle down effect is the things that you care about, the things you need, aren't going to happen. You know, and I think on a national level, we saw that with previous administration. He who shall not be
Yeah.
named, because it's like Voldemort. I will not say his name out loud. But I think, you know, everything that happened nationally leading into the prior election, everything that's going to come to pass in the coming election, I think is really important. What's the message that we're saying as far as access to gender affirming care, access to reproductive rights, thoughts about clean energy, thoughts about the decision. There was a thing the other day about trash cans, and the trash cans that the rats are jumping into in New York City are finally being replaced. I mean, like, all of these things matter, and they're small. They feel like small things, but they're not small things. They're things that directly impact that young person. Because if that young person is, let's say, in between couch surfing and hasn't been able to find a bed in the shelter and is sleeping on the street, then you better believe that young person's running into that rat that's running into the trash can that hasn't been updated in 40 years because, I don't know, something happened in the budget and they couldn't bother to replace it. I mean, those things matter, and those things are things where people should be invested. I think this year, you know, all of the city council members that are up for re-election, I think there are some amazing folks on the city council that are really passionate and committed and have been pushing back so fiercely against a mayor that has shown such hostility to so many populations and so many communities,
Yeah.
that it feels good to know that we're putting people in office, you know, like Crystal Hudson, like, you know, like Tiffany Caban, people that care about the things that we care about, and are actually in a position to say, we're going to vote to make sure that this does not happen. We're going to say, this is not going to stand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I like to remind people that like the everything trickles up, and with the local election, you know, a lot of people say that all this like anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ narrative that is going around all over Florida, all these other different states. I mean, all of this is happening at the local level. All of this is happening at the local level. So, like, if I know a lot of New Yorkers are like, nah, this could never happen here, baby. It could happen here,
Yeah.
but y'all need to get fired up, especially at these local elections, because that's how these, excuse my language, those assholes get up all the way on the ladder and then they end up running the
Yeah.
country.
Yeah. And I think it's also, you know, there was a thing, I don't know, it's like 4 or 5 months ago that I saw some bill got passed in Albany that said that runaway and homeless youth under the age of 18 were now allowed to consent to their own medical care. And I saw it. It was like one of those blips that, you know, at the end of the day, you see a news blip. And I emailed a friend of mine. I said, wait, you mean they couldn't before? I mean, it was one of those things that was just not in my own mind. I was like, are you saying that if there was a 17-year-old that was in a shelter that was getting gender affirming care, they were not allowed to consent to their own medical care and and this is in New York. I mean, yes, we are a sanctuary city. We're a sanctuary state, but that doesn't mean that policies aren't happening here in the city, up in Albany, that impact our young people. And that's things that happen in education, things that happen for gender affirming care, ensuring that folks that come in from other states and other cities can get the care and the services they need
Yeah.
and know that they have a place to stay and a place to go, and aren't waiting 6 months to get food stamps. Like, those are actual policies that do impact them. And we are running into a lot of anti-trans hate. There's a lot of stuff going around the city. I mean, Eric Botcher's offices were like, vandalized. Things, people are like throwing bricks. There's hostility all over the city that we may not see as much as we see it in other places and other like flyover states, but it's still here, and the rhetoric is still here. And I think as we go into this next election cycle, we're going to see it come out more, and it's going to get much more heated. And so I think, again, this is the time to sort of mobilize together as a community and say, you know, the dancer at the Shell gas station. Like, this is the time when we as a community have to step together and be like, this will not stand. This will not stand for us. And we are stronger and more powerful together, and we are more affirming together. So the haters can hate all they want. We are going to stand there with that wall of love and our fierce lipstick and be like, that ain't going to fly.
That's
And
right.
I think that because your lipstick is fierce. Mine is like not even close.
I think we're kind of matching. We're like giving the same shade. Like, mine's a little more brown,
Yours is a
but
little more brown. I really kind of dick in yours more. I went red. I went all in with red.
oh, I love it. Now I know that for this election, things are a little different, and there we are voting for every single city council seat, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I actually want to talk to you a little bit about that. So I want you to explain, because for those of us in the studio audience who weren't paying attention in high school, that was me. What
Same.
exactly what exactly are the powers of the city council? Why does it matter in election that there is a city council? What do they do? Why do we care?
Yeah. Well, so all of this information I recently found out this year because I was so unaware of what the city council, they're incredibly important. And first off, what city council does is that they introduce and vote on legislation, which is incredibly important. And those are the people that it's honestly, the city council members are the people that we have, I feel like, the easiest access to as constituents. Like, if I have a problem with something that's going on, then I can call my city council member and be like, hey, why are they not picking up my trash every day, or something like that. Something else that they do is they negotiate the city's budget with the mayor and approve its adoption. Now, the budget of New York City is huge. It's like bigger than some states, right? Correct? That's
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
And something else that they do is they monitor city agencies to ensure that they are effectively serving New Yorkers. They also review land use and make decisions about growth and development in the city, and they investigate issues facing New Yorkers and create solutions. So they're incredibly important. The reason for the city council is that it's so critical because they represent their individual districts, as I was saying, and that they're made up of neighborhoods that the city council essentially they call home. I know Marty Gold Cummings was running for city council a few years back, and didn't actually win, but made some huge strides. I love Marty so much. The reason why Marty's crazy,
Yeah.
but it's a good kind of crazy because they've
kind of crazy.
done and it's important because the constituents here, they have tangible effects on everyday lives of all of New Yorkers. And an example of their powers is the ability to allocate those funds directly from their offices to local nonprofits or organizations that are working to alleviate problems such as homelessness, like we were talking about, on top of their considerable legislative power. And an example of those powers is that most recently, this past July, the city council voted overwhelmingly to override the mayor's veto regarding legislation aimed at addressing the homelessness crisis out of shelters, which we were talking about, but also to prevent evictions of the lowest income New Yorkers most at risk of homelessness from entering the shelter system. So it's so important, and your vote matters, y'all.
Yeah. No, it absolutely does. I mean, and you were talking about things that the city council does, like land use and decisions about growth and the development of the city. We can't spit without seeing another building going up and seeing scaffolding on another corner with another tall high rise and another tall luxury building. And there was a conversation not that long ago about, how many of those units are supposed to be allocated to low income communities and those in need. And those are things that happen. Those are decisions that get made. When school buses don't show up and kids are sitting outside at 5 o'clock in the morning waiting for a school bus for hours because they can't get it together at the New York State Department of Education, the agencies are accountable to the city council. They have to report to the city council. This is what we did right. This is what we did wrong. This is where we need more budgeting season. This is where cuts are coming from. Like all of these things, again, there's like this interplay. They're like the two little, whatever, the puzzle pieces that like interlock together. You pull out one, you can't do them. They have to go to hand in hand. Because all of those things are making a difference. There was something recently about the mayor now adding like another 5% budget cut, telling agency to cut even more. It's like, how much more do you want people to cut? People are waiting months to get their food stamps. There was something like less than like 20% of applications for food stamps are getting approved right now, as opposed to like 90%, which was 3 years ago. Well, what was that thing that changed in the last 3 years? Oh, yes, that was an election. Those things are like constantly swirling around us, and it can be really hard to see them and feel them when you're in the throes. But that's why, you're here, I'm here. That's why Drag Out the Vote is here. That's why we're having conversations about elections. Show up, vote, be engaged, be aware. And on that note, I'm going to ask you to list all of the amazing deadlines that are coming up, because I never remember any of them except that November 7th is election day. Right. But what are the other deadlines that are coming up for New York State elections that people should be aware of?
The number one is the absentee ballot applications are due into the Board of Elections by Monday, October 23rd. So if you're not going to be in town and you want to vote beforehand, absentee ballots are Monday, October 23rd. Very important. Both voter registration in person and mail-in, and the change of address deadlines are Saturday, October 28th. And the last day to apply for an absentee ballot in person is Monday, October 6th. So everyone needs to just make sure that they go to elections.ny.gov for more information, because they'll list it out and they give you all the tea you need to know.
Yes. Yes. You just reminded me of something. Hold on. I've only had 3 cups of coffee. It'll come to my brain in 1 second. What was it? Voter. Oh, homeless. There we go. If you are homeless and you are concerned about trying to register to vote, list the address. If you don't have, like, if you're couch surfing, talk to the Board of Elections. If you are like currently getting mail, like let's say at California or street work, see if you can use that as your place to register to vote. Like, go to the Board of Elections and ask the questions. This is what they are trained to do. Do not think that just because you are currently in transition, because you're trying to find stable housing, that your voice doesn't matter and that you should not still be entitled to vote. It's really important.
Yeah, that is so important. And remember that November 6th is in-person NYC collaboration with the Free to Be Youth Project.
Yeah, we're going to be in person. We're going to do it at the center. We're still figuring out the nuts and bolts, but stay tuned to our Instagram, your Instagram, everyone's Instagram. It'll be all over. I think we're bringing Marty out for the party. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.